by World of Warships. The Cannibal Escape. Australian Penal Colony. Prisons are notoriously hard places to get out of, with their high walls, locked doors, searchlights, and guards everywhere. But what if your prison was a penal colony in Australia back in the 18th and 19th century? For all they needed to keep the convicts in were a few guards, as the surrounding barren wilderness or shark-infested ocean would deter even the most aspiring escapee. So if you were going to escape such hellish conditions, you'd have to be extremely tough and determined. The harshness of the situation demanded it, and probably the most gruesome of all escapes involved a convict named Alexander Pearce. Pearce was an Irishman who had originally been convicted for stealing 6 pairs of shoes. He was sentenced to 7 years in an Australian penal colony. Since arriving in Van Diemen's Land Penal Colony, Australia in 1821, he had been nothing but a troublemaker. While there, he continued his crimes and was further convicted of numerous offenses, including stealing ducks, turkeys, and a wheelbarrow, and twice was found guilty of being drunk and disorderly. And his latest conviction was for forging an order with the intention to defraud. For these crimes, he was repeatedly given a lashing and on one occasion was sentenced to 6 months on a chain gang. Finally, in 1822, he was sent to Sarah Island. This penal colony was one of the worst of them all, and you were only sent here if you had been disruptive at one of the other less strict penal colonies. For Sarah Island encampment was on a desolate, windswept spot next to the island's harbor and was surrounded by a vast jungle. Despite all this, shortly after Pearce arrived there, he already managed to escape into the jungle with 7 other convicts. The escapees headed towards the settlement of Hobart, 90 miles away, but after 15 days they were hopelessly lost and hadn't eaten for days, so the group felt they had no choice but to resort to cannibalism. The first victim was an easy choice for the men. Alexander Dalton was an unpopular member of the gang because back in the penal colony, he volunteered as a flogger where he whipped the other convicts. Deranged with hunger, Robert Greenhill grabbed an axe and smashed it into Dalton's skull. The gang then feasted on his organs and flesh. At this stage, 2 of the group, fearing they might be next, decided to leave and went their separate ways. The remaining members of the group drew straws, and Thomas Bodenham drew the shortest one. He knelt down and was killed by an axe blow to the back of the head, then was subsequently served up as lunch. It was a week later and starvation was looming for the group once more. A fight broke out between 2 of the convicts. It occurred when John Mathers was foraging for roots in desperation to find something to eat. Greenhill crept up on him and attacked him, presumably to try and eat him. This led to the rest of the group joining in the fight, resulting in Mathers being killed and becoming the next meal for the 3 remaining hungry group members. Then, a few days later, a group member named Matthew Travers was bitten on the foot by a venomous snake and died after a prolonged fever several days later, after his wound had become gangrenous. He became the 2 remaining group members' next meal. Now, only Alexander Pearce and Robert Greenhill were left. They both vowed to work together in order to get to civilization, but their trust soon evaporated, and one night Pearce butchered Greenhill with an axe. Pearce then continued his journey alone, on the way raiding an Aboriginal campsite for food in order to survive. Finally, he reached civilization and soon ended up falling in with a gang of sheep rustlers. But after nearly 4 months on the run, Pearce was recaptured and consumed with guilt, confessed to the murders and the act of cannibalism. But such was the disbelief of his story that the authorities simply didn't believe him and sent him back to serve an extended sentence on Sarah Island. This might have been the end to the story, but a few years later in 1824, he escaped again with the help of a fellow convict, a young man named Thomas Cox. A few weeks later, further down the coast, a ship stopped to investigate a beach fire and found Pearce eating him. Pearce ended up confessing no less than 3 times to his crime of cannibalism before his execution. Once to the magistrate, then to the base commander, and lastly the night before his execution to a priest. Each time the details differed slightly, but the overall message was always the same. He had killed or taken part in killing his fellow escapees and ate their bodies. It was said he showed some remorse for having done these wicked deeds. Subsequently, he was convicted of murder and cannibalism. He was hanged for his crimes on July 19, 1824. There is no record of what he requested for his last meal. This Simple History episode was brought to you by World of Warships. The game is free to play, and it's referred to as the thinking man's action game because it's the perfect balance of action and strategy. You command a massive naval fleet featuring some of history's most iconic war vessels. In the game, you can unlock new ships and dominate the oceans with 30 million players worldwide. Experience combat in weather effects that make each engagement unique and change the tactics of battle. In World of Warships, each in-game ship is faithfully recreated using 3D scans of the real-life version. World of Warships is constantly updating the game, so there's something new to experience with a steady cadence of new missions, game updates, and events. There are over 200 ships to play across 11 different nations. Use our exclusive code below and get a free USS Langley aircraft carrier, which allows for a completely different form of fast-paced World of Warships gameplay. Click the link below to play World of Warships and collect an exclusive bonus starter pack. New players can register with the code PLAYLANGLEY2019 to receive 300 doubloons, 1 million credits, the USS Langley aircraft carrier, 3 days of premium